Alright, there are a lot of guns and gun designs out there. Some are well designed and reliable, some not so well. Some stand the test of time and are in service or still being manufactured after years of existence. Some, on the other hand, are obsolete only after a couple years of being introduced into the gun scene. A pretty significant portion of these guns that are reliable and stand the test of time are the firearm designs and patents of John Moses Browning. John Moses Browning has created and designed firearms that have shaped the face of warfare, civilian sports, and the world like over. He designed such guns as the M2 machine gun, M1911, M1919, and such others. He is also the father of such calibers as the 32 ACP, 45 ACP, and the massive 50 BMG. I'm going to take a look at some of his more significant gun designs. I think if we covered every patent and gun blueprint he made, this video would be about 10 hours long. To note, I did not make this list. It came from the Wikipedia page on John Browning. So with that out of the way, let's begin.
Background.
Alright, let's start off with some background. John Moses Browning was born on January 23, 1855, and was the son of Jonathan Browning, a fellow gunsmith who was a member of the Church of the Latter-day Saints. One thing to note about Jonathan Browning is the fact he practiced polygamy and had 3 wives, whom he fathered 22 children with. So do with that what you will. John's father established a gunsmithing shop in, I think, Ogden, Illinois. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But here, this is where John Browning worked from the age of 7, creating his first firearm at the age of 13. Working with his father, he was taught firearm design, engineering, and experimenting from a young age. In 1878, John Moses Browning and his brother created the John Moses and Matthew Sandifer Company, later renamed to the Browning Arms Company. He married Rachel Theresa Child and fathered 10 children of his own, although 2 died. The massive gun manufacturer of Winchester gained an interest in Jonathan Browning's Model 1878 single-shot rifle and bought and manufactured the design from him for $8,000. That would be over $200,000 adjusted for inflation. Browning would later partner with Winchester and have his designs produced through them. He designed the long recoil system around this time, and it was used in his very popular Browning Auto 5. John Browning later in his life became known as always designing something new. His efforts would pump out timeless designs that served well in every field. Unfortunately, John Moses Browning would die in November 26, 1926 in Belgium at the age of 71.
Pistols.
The FN M1900 was produced in 1896 for FN. It was a semi-automatic blowback operated pistol chambered in 32 ACP that had a capacity of 7+1. The gun had fixed sights on the slide to aim. It weighed around 1 pound with a barrel length of 4 inches and an overall length of 6.8 inches. President Theodore Roosevelt was said to own an M1900 with pearl grips that resided at his bedside. Through its introduction into World War II, the Chinese essentially copied it as a basis for other weapons. The North Korean military also copied the pistol as the Type 64. It was given the title as the first production handgun with a slide. The Colt M19 M1900 was a self-loading pistol produced from 1900 to 1902, and it was used to introduce the .38 ACP pistol caliber. The gun utilized a bolt and slide that enveloped the entire barrel, unlike other pistols at that time. It had a magazine capacity of around 7 rounds and had an effective range of around 25 yards. It was tested by the US military where it performed okay, even though some M1900s were bought for military service where it saw some usage in the Moro Rebellion. Some variants include a sport version that got rid of the safety and rubberized the grips. The Colt M1902 was not an entirely new design, but an improvement on the M1900. The pistol would kind of act as a father to a family of other related pistols. The pistol wasn't received that well because of the crude grips, poor balance, and lack of safety. It was tested by the American and Swedish military, but it never went anywhere. The two variants of this pistol were military and sport. It was operated via a short recoil system and chambered in .38 ACP. One of the pistols fathered by the Colt M1902 was the model 1903 pocket hammer. It was designed as a service pistol chambered in the now obsolete .38 ACP. The pistol lacked the feature of a safety and slide lock. As far as I know, it was never tested by the US military, but it did see some usage in the Mexican Revolution. The FN Model 1903 was a semi-automatic pistol chambered in .380 ACP, or 9x20 Browning long, that first saw production in the early 1900s. It had a capacity of 7 rounds for the 9mm variant at least. The pistol weighed 32 ounces unloaded, had a barrel length of 8 inches, and had a barrel length of 5 inches. The model 1903 was received as a lightweight, reliable pistol. Before World War I, 1903 saw purchases from Norway and Sweden for military usage. The Ottoman Empire also bought the 1903 for police forces. After the wars, several other countries adopted and purchased the pistol for their militaries. Some countries include Estonia, Paraguay, and El Salvador. The 1903 pocket hammerless. The name hammerless in the name comes from the fact that the hammer of the pistol is hidden internally beneath the slide. It was chambered in the .32 ACP and .380 ACP calibers. It had an 8-round detachable box magazine. I guess the pistol was received well because it had at least 570,000 units made by the end of its production in 1945. Some pistols were issued to officers and other personnel in the 70s. The gun also had some infamous usage, however. War criminal Hideki Tojo attempted suicide via Colt Model 1903 pocket hammerless before his trial after Japan surrendered at the end of World War II. It was used by Bonnie and Clyde in a jailbreak, and Al Capone was allegedly said to carry one of these in his coat. The M1905 was a small and light pistol. It held a 6-round box magazine that held 25 ACP. The production of this pistol went on from 1906 to 1959. It was famously used in the attack of the 20th Convoy, an operation where Belgian resistance forces during World War II attacked and stopped a train that was transporting Jews to Auschwitz, where they freed everyone on board. The Model 1908 Vest Pocket was almost the exact same gun as the early 1906 model. The difference between the pistols is the M1905 was produced in Europe and the 1908 was made in the US. Like the earlier model, the pistol was chambered in 25 ACP and had a 6-round single-stack magazine. Due to its compact nature, it was used by the American and British OSS and SOE for their covert operations. The pistol was advertised as a highly concealable pistol thanks to its small design. It could be bought with a variety of finishes such as a blue finish or nickel plating. This pistol is just a later produced model variant of the Model 1903 pocket hammerless, which was made in 1908. The FN Model 1910 was a pistol produced from 1910 to 1983 for FN. A striker-fired mechanism and grip safety was put into the gun's design. It held 6 or 7 or even 8 or 9 rounds for whatever caliber it was chambered in. The pistol was solely produced in Europe because Colt refused to manufacture it in the US. Being introduced in 1910, the Model 1910 contained an ingenious operating spring that encompassed the barrel that later saw use in the Walther PPK and Makarov pistol. A variant known as the Model 1922 existed with a longer barrel, longer grip, and longer slide. The Model 1910s were bought for the usage in the Kingdom of Serbia, a now defunct country once located in the Balkans. The M1911 is the magnum opus of John Browning's firearm designs. It is what he is most known for. It was most popularly used by the U.S. military as the standard sidearm during World War I and World War II. Designed in 1911, the pistol was chambered in the powerful 45 ACP cartridge containing 8 rounds of the magazine. It is short recoil operated and has an effective range of around 160 feet. It cost around $26 per unit in 1938, now around $500. There had been 3 million 1911s produced by Colt, not including variants or the many clones. The most notable reason and why it's so known is for its reliability. It was used in World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and Iraq for all that reason. Some units of the U.S. military today, some variants of the 1911 are still in service for stopping power over a century later. Still now, it is sworn by boomers all across the nation. The Browning High Power is like the less popular sibling of the M1911. The pistol was designed due in part to France's need for a new military sidearm. Any gun that entered France's military trials must have been capable of these requirements. The arm must be compact and the magazine have a capacity of at least 10 rounds. The gun have a magazine disconnect device, an external hanger, and positive safety. The gun would be robust and simple to disassemble and reassemble. The gun be capable of killing a man at least 50 meters. The gun had a capacity of 17 rounds of 9mm and was operated through a short recoil system. The gun's most notable use was in World War II, where it was both used by the Allied and Axis powers. The Germans got a hold of the pistol when they captured Belgium and found that the arms produced for FN found the arms producer of FN. After that, the manufacturers of the high power decided to keep on producing the pistol up until 2018. The Colt Woodsman was a semi-automatic pistol designed as a sporting pistol made in 1915. It had a barrel length ranging from 4 to 6 inches and chambered in .22 long rifle. The Woodsman was notably made in 3 ways of production. The first phase lasted from 1915 to 1941, in which it had a target model and sport model. The second phase lasted from 1949 to 1955. Here, a model that included a last round bolt hold open and magazine safety. The last phase lasted from 1955 through 1977, in which only the sights, grips, and markings changed a little. They have ceased production since.
Shotguns.
The Browning Auto 5 is probably one of John Moses Browning's most famous designs. This gun gained the achievement of being the first successful semi-auto shotgun design. It was operated via long recoil and held 4 rounds in its 2 magazine with 1 in the chamber. The gun was manufactured in 16, 20, and 12 gauge. The gun weighed 9 pounds and had an overall length of 50 inches. The initial designs were made in 1898 and made as a pen in the year 1900. From there, it was manufactured for nearly the next 100 years. It was seen as reliable, being used all the way from World War I to Vietnam. The Auto 5 was especially favored by the Special Air Service during the Malayan emergency, where it worked reliable in the dense jungles. The Ithaca 37 is a pump-action shotgun made by the Ithaca arms manufacturer. They did not make the gun solely themselves, but based their design on John Browning's Remington Model 16. This gun had a somewhat unusual feature for a shotgun in which spent shot shells were ejected from the bottom of the gun instead of the side. The gun is manufactured in the gauges of 12, 16, 20, and 28. The shotgun is also known for its military usage. It was used in the U.S. Armed Forces in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. It is also used by police forces and civilians all alike. The Stevens Model 520, or more rather the series of guns, was a pump-action shotgun produced by the J. Stevens Arm and Tool Company. The series had a recognizable hunchback receiver and the ability to be easily put in half, or also known as takedown. The 520 in the series was released in 1909 only and was offered in 12 gauge through the Sears and Roebuck catalog. In 1940, the 520A model was put up for production and had some different internals than its predecessor. The Model 620, released in 1927, being a more streamlined version of the 520, with some different controls. A variant of the 620, known as the 620A, was made with the main difference being how the stock was attached. As far as military goes, the 520A was rebranded as the 520-30, and the Model 620A became known as the 620. They saw service in World War II as trench guns and also saw service in the Korean and Vietnam Wars. The Winchester Model 1887 is another famous shotgun design of John Moses Browning, most famously used in Terminator 2. The Model 1887 was a lever-action shotgun that could be chambered in 12 or 10 gauge. The tubular magazine located on the gun held a total of 5 plus 2 rounds. When it came to barrel lengths, you could get it in 30 and 32 inches, with a 20-inch barrel being available through special order. When Winchester hired John Browning to make a shotgun, Browning wanted to design a pump-action shotgun, but Winchester insisted on having a lever action. The reasoning for this was that Winchester wanted to be the gun company known to make lever actions. At that time, when the Model 1887 was made, the shot shells that Model 1887 fired used black powder for the propellant, which was weaker than the new smokeless powder coming around at that time. The Model 1887 wasn't strong enough to deal with the smokeless powder shells, so they introduced the Model 1901, which is the same gun but able to shoot shells that use smokeless powder. The Winchester Model 1898 was a pump-action shotgun. It was introduced in the May of 1839 and only saw production until 1897. Probably because it was not strong enough to handle the smokeless shotgun shells being introduced at that time. The Model 1897 was the most iconic out of the World War I trench sweepers. The shotgun was pretty much just an evolved version of the failed Winchester Model 1833. 12 gauge as well as 16 was what the Model 1897 was chambered in. It was fed by a 5-round tubular magazine loaded with a port at the bottom of the gun, and this same port is where the spent casings were ejected. Probably the most iconic feature of the Model 1897 was the ability to slam fire it, an action where someone could hold down the trigger and rack the pump for a fast rate of fire. This gun was adopted by the US military in 1899 to fight in the Philippines. It later saw service in World War I, where it was used to sweep out enemy trenches like the Germans. Due to its devastating effect, Germany wanted to make the use of the shotgun a war crime and threatened to kill any captured troop found with the shotgun. So yeah, that happened. The Winchester Model in 1812 was a pump-action shotgun. This gun was kind of like the Model 1897's less-known younger brother. Anyway, this shotgun held 6 rounds of either 12, 16, 20, or 28 gauge, depending on whatever it was chambered in. It was supposed to be the next step up from the previous Model 1897, but it never really gained that title. This shotgun also saw use in the military through World War I through Vietnam. Production ended for the Model 1912 in 1964 due to its expensive price to produce. The Browning Superpose was potentially designed back in 1922, making it one of John Moses Browning's last gun designs before he died in 1926. The design was actually finished by Browning's son, Val Browning, who perfected the selective trigger design. It was an over-under shotgun that could be chambered in 410, 28, 20, 16, and 12 gauge. Barrel lengths came in 20, 26, 28, and 30. When the gun was made to be affordable and was considered revolutionary during its initial production in the early 30s. The Remington Model 17 was a pump-action shotgun which looks similar to the Model 1897. It had an option of loading 2.5-inch and 2 3/4 20-gauge shot shells. This gun was known to be lightweight, weighing only around 5 pounds. This design was later approved upon by another legendary gun designer, John Pederson. I might do a video on him sometime.
Rifles.
The Winchester Model 1885 was a single-shot, falling block action rifle. It was the design that John and Mrs. Browning used to start getting his gun designs out into the world. Winchester later bought the rifle patent off of Browning and improved upon it, like improving the breech seal, and then released it as the Model 1885. Winchester adopted the design to fit all sorts of cartridges. Two models, or more rather frames of this gun were made, the low wall and high wall. The high wall was adjusted the wall of the receiver's sides to accommodate higher pressure rounds, while the low wall was made for lower pressure cartridges. Winchester mostly picked up this design for the popular long-range match shooting at that time. The Winchester Model 1866 was a lever-action rifle made to stand the power of heavy and smokeless powder cartridges. It could be chambered in 4570, 4590, 4082, 4065, 3856, 5 and 110 Winchester, 4070, 3870, 33, and 32 gauge. Depending on what round you were using, it could hold 7, 8, or 9 rounds. It weighed 9 pounds with barrels that could reach up to 28 inches. During the start of World War I, the Model 1886 was used by the Royal Flying Corps, chambered in special incendiary 4590 Sharps bullets to take down enemy airships. The Winchester Model 1890 was a pump-action rifle that was made to shoot in smaller calibers. It was very similar to Browning's other pump-action shotgun designs. Rounds of either 22 short, 22 long rifle, or 22 Winchester rimfire were loaded into a magazine that held up to 22 rounds. The 1890 had 3 variants. One was just the default, the second design was a takedown rifle, and the third being able to lock the bolt back externally and had the ability to be broken in half. The Winchester Model 1892 was a lever-action rifle meant to act as the replacement for the earlier Winchester 1873. The rifle could hold around 9 to 12 rounds depending on what you had it chambered in. 3220 Winchester, 3840, 4440, 2520, or 218B was the calibers the Model 1892 was chambered in. It was produced from 1892 to 1945, in which over 1 million rifles were made. A significant usage for this rifle was when Robert E. Peary when he took the rifle on his expeditions to the North Pole. The Winchester Model 1894 was a rifle designed in 1894 that became a popular rifle for hunting usage. The Model 1894 was one of the first guns released on the market to specifically use smokeless powder. Such calibers this rifle was chambered in include 410, 45 long Colt, 357, and 3030 Winchester. The Model 1894 did see some purchases from militaries such as the US and Canada during both World Wars. In the years of 1964, 1982, and 1992, the rifle had some changes made to it. One cool thing about this rifle is that it had been continually manufactured ever since its release in 1894. The Winchester Model 1895 is significant for several reasons, one including it was one of the first rifles to use an internal box magazine. the magazine of which held around 4 or 5 rounds depending on the caliber. This gun did see some military usage and purchases by a lot of militaries, which resulted in the gun being made to fit some military rifle cartridges such as 30-06, 303 British, and 7.62x54R. The gun saw most of its production from 1895 to 1940, and even some limited production in 1995. The Winchester Model 1900 was a single-shot takedown rifle chambered in .22 long rifle. The gun was small, only having an overall length of 33 inches. It was bolt action, so you would have to load in one round into the breech, close the bolt, and cock back the firing pin separately to the fire. The gun was relatively unsuccessful, only seeing around 100,000 units made by the end of its production. The Remington Model 8 was a long recoil operated semi-automatic rifle released in 1905 under Remington. The gun had either an internal 5-round box magazine or a 15-round one. The gun had a last round bolt hold open along with a takedown feature. Remington created 4 new types of rounds for this gun to be chambered in, such as the 25 Remington, 30 Remington, 32 Remington, and 35 Remington. This gun really didn't see any military action during its lifetime, but some were purchased by some French aviation forces during the First World War in very small numbers. However, this gun was most famously used by Frank Hamer, the man who tracked down and killed Bonnie and Clyde. The Browning 22 semi-auto, or also known as the SA-22, was a semi-automatic .22 rifle released by FN in 1914, based on a patent by John Browning. The rifle was fed via a tubular magazine, and it had an ejection port that ejected spent casings downward. Production was led by FN until 1973, until Japan later picked up the rifle and continued production over there. The SA-22 in marketing, meanwhile, was targeted to all age, from experienced adults to new and young shooters. The Remington Model 24 was a semi-auto .22 rifle very closely related to the SA-22. It was produced from 1922 to 1935. Like the SA-22, the Model 24 deflected cases downward, in which sometimes hot casings could be ejected down someone's shirt sleeve or hitting their arm, which results in discomfort. To prevent this, there was like a case deflector that would guide spent casings away from the shooter. Like the SA-22, the Model 24 was a takedown gun. The FN trombone, probably the weirdest name for a gun that I have ever heard, was a pump-action .22 rifle made in 1919 and saw actual production in 1922. It held 11 rounds in a tubular magazine. Over 150,000 were produced between its manufacturing from 1922 to 1974. The wood stock of this rifle was kinda infamous due to its tendency to start to crack because of the shape of the receiver. The trombone is also known for its rarity.
Machine guns.
The M1895 Colt Browning was a heavy machine gun introduced in 1889. The gun was fed via a belt that held rounds of either 6mm Lee Navy, 7x57mm Mauser, 30-40 Krag, 30-06, 303 British, 7.62x54R, and 6.5x52 Carcano that fired at around 450 rounds per minute. The M1895 used air for cooling. It was gas operated, so So when a bullet travels down the barrel, hot expanding gases enter a hole known as a port, and that gas goes back into the receiver and operates the bolt. The M1895 never saw official adoption into the military, but some guns were bought and used in the Spanish-American War, where it was used by the Marines. During World War I, the gun did see some use in French and Canadian forces, where their guns saw heavy use until replaced by the Vickers machine gun. The M1917 was a heavy machine gun that saw military introduction in 1917 and saw light service in World War II through Vietnam. John Browning first started working on the first design in 1900, but he dropped it until 1910. In 1910, the first prototype was built that was said to have worked quite well. However, he would improve upon the M1917 by moving the ejection port and replacing the hammer with a two-part firing pin. The gun fired .30-06 Springfield at a rate of fire around 450 rounds per minute. The gun was classified as a heavy machine gun, weighing at around 103 pounds, with the included tripod, water, and ammo. The gun was put into light service near the end of World War I, where only around 1,000 guns were used. The gun later did see some military variants such as the M1917A1 and the M1918. The M1919 is another one of John Browning's famous guns. The gun was a medium machine gun chambered in .30-06 initially. It fired at around 400 to 600 rounds per minute through a short recoil system of operation. It was fed through a cloth ammo belt that was later replaced by the M1 Link, a disintegrating belt. It was first put into service in 1919 and has seen service in World War II in the U.S. military ever since. Squads operating the M1919 consist of 5 people, of which are a squad leader, gunner, assistant gunner, and 2 ammo bearers. The gun also saw use in aircraft. Several variants of the M1919 exist, such as the M1919A1, which was overall lighter and had new sights. And there was also the T-66, a testbed for the concept of the general-purpose machine gun. The BAR, or also known as the Browning Automatic Rifle, was an auto rifle that saw service from 1918 to 1973. It was chambered in .30-06 with a 20-round magazine or even a 40-round magazine meant for use in anti-aircraft roles. It was select fired, was air-cooled, and was operated through a gas-operated system. The BAR wasn't officially adopted into the American military in 1938, although it saw some linked service in World War I. During World War II, the BAR saw much more usage. Several variants exist for the gun, like the A2, with the strangest being the heavy counter-assault rifle, basically a modernized version of the BAR. The M2 Browning, or commonly referred to as the Modus, was the 50 BMG chambered heavy machine gun. The rate of fire differed on what variant of the gun you had. The gun was short recoil operated. The original M2 had a rate of fire around 400 to 600 rounds per minute. The M2HB had a rate of fire around 450 to 575 rounds per minute, with the highest being an aircraft variant that had a rate of fire around 750 to 800 rounds per minute. Although 1200 was achievable through sustained fire, the M2 saw initial adoption for military use in 1933. During World War II, the gun was used and mounted on almost anything to everything that could support its weight. It was mounted on tanks, jeeps, boats, and much, much more. As Brendan Herrera, the AK guy, puts it, if we found out how to mount the M2 on people, we would. The gun, with its 50 BMG caliber, that caliber was meant for anti-material purposes, which was effective against tanks, people, aircraft, and lightly armored boats. Even today, it still sees service and is still put in the same roles it was used for during World War II. The M4 autocannon was a 37mm autocannon that was the biggest gun out of any John Mrs. Browning's firearm designs. The gun had a cyclic rate of around 150 rounds per minute, with a muzzle velocity of 2,000 feet per second. The M4 was commonly loaded with explosive rounds or armor-piercing shells that could penetrate 1 inch of armor plating from around 500 yards away. It was fed through a magazine. The choices were a 5-round clip, a 15-round belt, or a 30-round belt, and was fired manually or via remote control. Operation of this gun consisted of a recoil system that involved hydraulics. The U.S. Air Force only really put this gun in a couple of aircraft because pilots hated the low muzzle velocity. The Navy, on the other hand, mounted the M4 autocannon on PT boats during the Solomon Islands campaign during World War II. And with that, that's the last of John and Mrs. Browning's gun designs. So, that was the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't, I don't really care. So, yeah. This video wasn't really meant to be political or anything. It's just something I wanted to talk about. Yeah, I don't really have much to say for this. This is pretty much going to be the last video I put out for this month and for the entirety of the rest of the summer, because school is going to start up soon. I'm excited about that. That's going to be awesome. Hey! Yeah, so yeah. I have a couple other video ideas. I don't know if any of them will actually work into actual videos. So, yeah. See you some other time.